Now, this is the Lions offense that we're used to seeing, and if they can keep playing like this, the Lions can go pretty far in the very near future. What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, and in today's video, we are going to be recapping the Lions win over the Denver Broncos, where the Lions came out on top 42-17. And this was a much needed win for the Lions, especially after having to suffer losses in 2 of the last 3 games and really just not looking like themselves ever since they came out of the bye. But the Lions came out on Saturday night and really put on a performance that should give a lot of fans a lot of excitement and a lot of belief that this team can regain the same type of form they had early in the season when they were looking like one of the top teams and a true contender for a Super Bowl early in this season. Now, there are a number of things to talk about from this game, and we're going to try to get to as many of them as we possibly can in this video. But first and foremost, we have to start with this Lions offense. Ever since the bye, outside of that Chargers game, this Lions offense just hasn't had the same pop to it. After a season of only having 7 turnovers last year, Jared Goff had already put up 9 turnovers in 3 of the last 4 games. And this was an issue that, again, the Lions just really can't have when it comes down to them winning. But going into this game against the Broncos, one of the teams that are the most prolific in creating turnovers, Jared Goff was able to come out of this completely spotless, never turning the ball over, never really even putting the ball in danger of being turned over. And that's something that we really got to tip our hat to. There are going to be times during the rest of the season where there's going to be opportunities to probably be critical of him or this offense or certain weapons on this offense. But in this game specifically, Jared Goff was absolutely on fire. And again, it did take a minute because coming out early in this game, the Lions were really trying to put the onus that, like, listen, we're going to throw the football, we're going to put the ball in Jared Goff's hands, and we're going to trust him. And early on, that wasn't really working out for them in the first quarter as both teams went scoreless. But once the second quarter got started, this team was rolling. The Lions were able to have 3 straight scoring drives, and Jared Goff was the mastermind behind leading these drives down the field, finishing the game 24 for 34 for 278 yards and 5 touchdowns. This is the first time Jared Goff has had 5 touchdowns since 2018. So it goes to show just how much trust and how much this Lions coaching staff wanted to get Goff out of that slump, that they were basically like, listen, we're going to trust you to lead us down the field. And it's a really good sign going forward. In a week where there's been a lot of talk, mainly driven by, former NFL cornerback Cam Newton, about whether or not certain quarterbacks are game changers and game managers, Jared Goff in this game proved to be more than just a game manager in this game. He proved that he can be the catalyst that can actually help this offense move and operate, and that he doesn't just have to be a cog in the wheel that, is Ben Johnson or is the structure of this offense. Now, with that said, this is just one game, and Jared Goff is going to have to show that he can replicate this type of performance against the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys down the rest of the stretch of this season. Both of those defenses are very aggressive, and they are known to be able to get to quarterbacks and make them erratic in some of their passing attempts. If Jared Goff can showcase this same type of performance, not necessarily the 5 touchdowns, but again, that same level of poise, that same level of command, that same ability to connect with a wide array of receivers, then this offense can definitely find success against both of those teams. And speaking of spreading the ball around and being able to connect with different wide receivers, I can't think of the last time that I saw Jared Goff connect with this many different wide receivers at the volume in which he did it. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown led the way with 7 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown, but then you still got a heavy dose of Sam LaPorta, 5 receptions for 56 yards. Jameson Williams got heavily involved with his first multi-catch game and was able to put up 47 yards of his own. Josh Reynolds put up over 40 yards on 4 receptions. Jahmyr Gibbs got another touchdown. This is the type of stuff that, again, it's not just the fact that Jared Goff was having such command, but it's the fact that, again, if you can't, as a defense, just cue in on one player and he's hurting you with a wide array of weapons, this offense becomes way more difficult to nail down, and it's harder to key in on his tendencies and thus make this offense just that much more prolific. And I think that's what we were seeing early in the season, and that's why this Lions offense was able to beat so many teams so handedly, being able to put up over 30 points and being able to, again, allow the defense more time to rest and allow them to play at their very best. And trust me, we're going to get to the defense in a minute because they deserve a great amount of praise as well. But before we get there, there's two other players that I do want to spotlight outside of Jared Goff, and that has to be Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam LaPorta. Every time we think that, like, again, that these rookies are standing out in a big way, they find another way of topping their previous performances. First, let's start with Jahmyr Gibbs, who comes out of this game with 108 total yards on the day, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown, over 9 yards per carry on 11 carries. These are just phenomenal numbers from a running back that a lot of people had questions about when the Lions decided to take him 12th overall. And trust me, I'm not trying to overblow just this one performance and saying that this is why that conversation is no longer relevant, but it's the consistent performance that Jahmyr Gibbs has had ever since David Montgomery first got injured and he was able to be the go-to back for those first couple of games. Since then, Jahmyr has just shown that he can be a consistent, reliable option for this, Lions offense. And it's showing to be a really strong and great pick by Brad Holmes, even though it's not the most conventional. And I'm not saying that just because Jahmyr Gibbs is lighting things up that you as a fan necessarily have to love every pick that Brad Holmes makes. But I do think it should allow us to give his picks more time to see how they actually translate and how they start to assimilate themselves to this offense. Jahmyr Gibbs maybe wasn't, the hottest name coming out, in the first couple weeks of the season. But since then, he has put together strong weeks and strong performances game after game. And is someone that, listen, CJ Stroud is probably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, but a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs should be in that conversation, along with the likes of CJ Stroud, with a Puka Nacua, with a Sam LaPorta. These 4 rookies are having very strong performances offensively. And I can't personally think of a time when a team was able to acquire 2 offensive rookies that were not quarterbacks and to see them thrive at this level. And it's also worth pointing out that Jahmyr is doing this while sharing the backfield with a veteran running back in David Montgomery, who is also having a strong year. And again, the fact that the Lions have been committed to these guys splitting carries close to even down the middle. Like I said, Jahmyr had 11 carries. David technically had more with 17, but David Montgomery was also still able to be productive in his touches as well, still being able to rack up 85 yards. The fact that this team is allowing both guys to flourish is, again, something that I think is relatively unique in the NFL, where sometimes you have teams that would rather go with the veteran or lean heavily to the hot hand and leave the veteran in the wayside. The Lions have really committed to the fact that they have a 2-headed monster and that they're willing to utilize both. And I think that is something that's going to benefit Jahmyr, not just for this season, but for the rest of his career going forward, to know that he has a counterpart that is going to help his career be that much longer, because he doesn't have to take all the punishment. He doesn't have to take 20 to 25 carries per game, and he can still focus on his role and still focus on being dynamic and explosive in the run game. And if we flip it over to the passing game, the same can be said about Sam LaPorta. He's on an offense that has an Amon-Ra St. Brown, that has a Jameson Williams, but yet he has built the rapport and the trust with Jared Goff to be a go-to target, not just in the red zone, because yes, he did pick up 3 touchdowns, and that's amazing to know that you have a guy that has a nose for the end zone, that can catch it, and break off tackles and again, get into the end zone that way, or just be a big target in the end zone that can make contested catches as well. Sam I've said it before, he's truly special in terms of what he's doing in the NFL. There are probably at most 5 really good tight ends, maybe 6, depending on, again, injuries or just how productive certain guys are being. Sam LaPorta is firmly, in my mind, in that top 5. And if you want to say that he's top 3, if you want to say he's top 2, at this point, it's really hard to argue with the stats and the production that he's putting up this year. And the thing that's so amazing about Sam's performance and his strong start to his NFL career is that it's not just touchdowns. It's not just, one specific thing that he's doing. He's doing it in a wide array of ways. He's being able to run routes really well. He's able to run after the catch. He's able to block really well. He has a foundation that, as an offense, again, you can kind of see why Brad Holmes wanted him, why he, had him so high up on his list as a draft prospect that he wanted to acquire. And you can see how he's going to help this offense reach new heights with the things that he's able to do with Jared Goff and in the whole structure of this offense. Now, with that said, that's a lot of talk about the offense. I do want to talk about this defense because that has been one of the units that has been just as up and down for a longer stretch of time. Obviously, the offense have had their struggles the last couple of games, but the defense has been up and down since week one for the most part. And for them to come into this game against the Denver Broncos, which, like I said, when me and Morgan did our film breakdown, I wasn't terribly worried about this offense. I was more so concerned about if the Lions offense struggled, if they committed turnovers, what type of position they would put the Lions defense in. But Aaron Glenn came out against this Broncos offense with an amazing game plan. He showed a lot of aggressiveness, not, willing to allow Russell Wilson to be comfortable in the pocket, and sent blitz after blitz after blitz, whether it was from the linebackers, whether it was from the corners, whether it was from the safeties. Aaron Glenn just didn't care, and he was definitely letting it all hang out. And I think that is the type of defense that this Lions team is going to need to be down the stretch and possibly even into the playoffs. We all know the makeup of this defensive roster. We all know what type of talent they have. We know that when it comes down to the defensive line, it's kind of Aiden and then everybody else. When it comes to the linebackers, it's kind of a mixed bag, but Alex Anzalone kind of leads that group. In the secondary, Cam Sutton is solid, but again, he's possibly in most teams a CB2, but he's having to play CB1 on this team. And we know at CB2, the Lions are basically shuffling that position as they now have Khalil Dorsey starting this game. But with that said, even with all the moving pieces, even with, the Lions missing some of their stars as far as CJ GJ being hurt, obviously James Houston being hurt from earlier in the season, the Lions came into this game against the Broncos, and like I said, were just outright aggressive, and they were very sound in their execution. You didn't see a lot of guys getting out of position when it came to pass rush. They were only able to pick up 2 sacks on the day, but that pressure was there, and it wasn't just like there as far as statistically, but it was actually impactful. You saw Russell Wilson getting his arm hit. You saw Russell Wilson being put in the turf. You saw him having to speed up his progression or having to move off his spot and not just be able to sit in the pocket and be comfortable. And that's the type of things that this defense needs. It doesn't necessarily need one player in particular to be the star, but it needs them as a collective unit to be able to work together, to be able to disrupt what these opposing offenses want to do. And that is something that's going to be very key, specifically going up against Minnesota, but even more so when dealing with Dallas in a couple weeks, because Dak Prescott is a guy that's a little more mobile than Russell Wilson is these days as far as athletically. But you still want to be able to disrupt their process. You still don't want them to be able to feel comfortable in being able to pick your defense apart in that way, because again, they're susceptible. They're susceptible at some of their corner spots and some of their safety spots. But in this particular game, the Lions were probably at their best, probably the best we've seen them all season, considering the caliber of quarterback, the caliber of offense that they were going against, the caliber of the offensive mind of a Sean Payton. And to go against a Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and be able to, again, limit those guys, to limit them on the run game, which is something that they've been relatively good at doing all year. That is something that you want to see out of your defense. And specifically, I want to give a lot of praise to 2 guys in particular, and that being Ifeatu Melifonwu and Isaiah Buggs. These are 2 guys early during training camp. There were a lot of questions if these guys would even make the roster. When it came down to Isaiah Buggs, when he did make the roster, a lot of us were shocked that he hadn't been starting, that he hadn't been active in a lot of games. But Isaiah Buggs has proven to be a true professional for the Detroit Lions in that he is always ready. At the time of this recording, I'm not sure what his actual PFF grade was, but I can say that in watching the game, Isaiah Buggs was very active in the middle of that defense. He obviously had the fumble recovery that was forced by Iffy on his sack of Russell Wilson. But just in general of just, again, being a force, being a guy that's constantly ready, not always hanging your head and always being, prepared for that moment ever since Aleem McNeil has went down. And even with the Lions losing Quentin Bohannon due to him being signed by another team. That performance by Buggs gives a lot of credence to what Dan Campbell has been talking about since he got here, and talking about how those practice squad guys, those other guys that may not be active, they are very key and pivotal to this team because they never know when their number is going to be called. So they constantly keep them in rotation and constantly making sure that they're ready and involved with the team so that when their number is called, they can play at a high level like Isaiah Buggs did. And Iffy, listen, I am so happy to see Iffy playing at this high of a level. And listen, I don't know how much longer it's going to last because obviously CJ GJ is going to be coming back really soon, and that may result in Iffy seeing some of his playing time limited. But as of right now, over the last couple games, I've been really, really encouraged by the play of Ifeatu Melifonwu. Like I said, basically stuffed the stat sheet this past week. He had a sack, he had a forced fumble, he had some pass breakups, he had tackles. Like, Iffy was everywhere. Everything that we have basically been talking about Brian Branch about and how he's usually stuffing the stat sheet, Iffy was at that level yesterday. And I'm super excited to see it for a guy that I was always really rooting for and really like the prospect of him being a future outside corner. For him to make that switch to safety, to buy in to that position change, and again, fight through injury, fight through that adversity, and get to this point where he's getting to start on a primetime game. And for him not to be the weak link of this defense, for him to go out there and make some really big plays when the Lions needed it, is a huge sign for his development and for what he could become for this Lions defense going forward. We don't know if they'll be able to re-sign a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the offseason. We don't know what the plans are for a Tracy Walker, seeing as he's being, demoted as we speak. But if he can continue to progress and get better at his craft, I really like the prospects of him being a starting safety in this league and possibly for this Lions team opposite Kirby Joseph going forward. So guys, with all of that said, I'm extremely excited. I'm very happy to see the Lions not just get a win, but look like the team that we were seeing early in the season and kind of regaining their form. The type of team that we were really feeling like even last year, like, hey, this is a Lions team that you didn't want to play come postseason time. And if they can continue this trend, if they can have a similar type of performance against Minnesota, if they can go out there and have a similar type of performance against Dallas, this is going to give not just us, but the players as well, a lot of confidence to do the impossible and maybe make a deep run into the playoffs. Right now, it's one step at a time. Right now, they enjoy this win, but we got to get back this upcoming week, prepare for Minnesota, take care of business with Minnesota, lock up this division, and then we'll see what the future holds. But very encouraged by this team's performance. Dan Campbell did a really great job as a head coach, leading this team and getting them prepared for this matchup. And I think we should all feel encouraged about them having the same level of preparedness when it comes to Minnesota this upcoming week. So with all that said, let me know what you guys think from this game. What really stood out from you? I know there's a lot of other great performances that I didn't get to highlight. Like I said, Jahmyr had a really strong performance, and I know there's probably going to be a number of you that want to talk about that. Let me know in the comment section below what really stood out to you. Are you more encouraged about the Lions' future going forward, or are you still a little skeptical based on the opponent that they went against? Let me know what you guys think. Also, you can always head over to PrideDetroit.com if you're looking for any additional coverage or any additional information on the Lions, and be sure to subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell. That way you can be notified every time we upload new videos or go live over here on YouTube. With all that said, I'm Miko. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.